as I was telling you before, here is Tim Ward coming and join us from Xconnect as the VP of Number Information Services.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Well, when I told my family what I was going to be doing, they usually are not interested, but I finally got some reaction. I said, I'm going to be talking about the future of a phone number. And they went, what? Really? And then I reverted back, because that's what we do in the family. And I said, well, wait a second. You're not interested in your phone number? What's your phone number? They knew it. What other series of numbers, of valid number digits, do you know? None of them. What would happen if somebody took away your phone number? Not happy. So all of a sudden, this is one of my favorite topics, but I think it's everybody's favorite topic. But really, let's talk about the future, because that's a present. Our theme today is the future of mobile. Is there a future for the mobile number as well? You might be biased, the team from Xconnect, a provider of number information.
Yeah,
you see a future for yourself as well?
I'm very biased. And the whole piece of numbers, we've had to occasionally argue this. We've been told, no, everybody will move over to a SIP address or an email address, and that's how you remember people, that's how you'll talk to people. But the one thing which has just lived on, and it continues as a kind of underlying identifier, both for finding you and you know what your number is. Everybody knows what their number is. I know that there are people in every country who have got a telephone number. It conforms to a global standard. It's memorable. It's just not too big. It's something that started off kind of belonging to a household. It was your fixed number. It kind of evolved to being personal. It's now your mobile number. It's evolved to being a business. It's identifying a business. It goes on to identifying an item, an IoT, a device somewhere. So those numbers are continuing against all the odds, against all the predictions, to be the fundamental identifier for finding something, how to reach it.
I want to follow up on that, because you say it's the identity of something, of finding something, right? And that is, well, providing your pizza places and something like that. Is that all? Is that more that the phone number can do or does right now? Or is it just about that?
Well, it goes to another piece. And obviously, there's a number to find you. There's a number to say who you are. You get a call and you see that caller ID come up. Sometimes your phone will recognize that number. It'll be in your address book. It's going to tell you who it is. Sometimes it won't. And then you're looking for further attributes. You're looking for further information. And I'm going to use that word attributes as well, because I think we refer to it as an identity. That's a really dangerous thing, especially when you listen to all the rest of the conversation. Can I describe it as an identity? What is it? Well, no, it's an attribute. You have an identity which is made up of a series of attributes, and it depends upon how important that transaction is that you're having with someone as to how many attributes you need. Do I know the number? Do I recognize it? Do I know someone else who knows that number and can tell me it's a good one? What's a referral to that number to say it's good information? And we're seeing it being used as a very generic identifier in these transactions, not just calling, not just messaging. WhatsApp uses your regular telephone number. Your bank account is using your phone number as a means of communicating with you. I've even seen in fact, a conversation you and I had was a bank that is using a phone number as your account identifier. So that has become stronger and stronger, and it's also become an identifier for gathering additional attributes. What else can I find out about this person? Have they moved their phone? Have they got a new account? Has something changed? And again, is that a risk factor? So the phone number is being used as an attribute to almost say, is there a risk? What else do I know about this person? What are those other pieces of information which help me, and I'll use the trust word, build trust? Because that's what I'm doing. I'm building a picture of the person I'm calling, or the person who's calling me, by gathering all of these different attributes about a particular number to help me build that picture that I'm not bothered about AI here. It's some very good old-fashioned, actually not a lot of intelligence, but a little intelligence to say, yeah, I know how these things fit together, and it's built for me a picture that says, yeah, I will talk to you. Yes, I will do a financial transaction. Yes, I will talk about my mortgage and my pension. I need a lot of attributes before I'll have that conversation. And the telephone number is a very good place to start in having those conversations to build up the extra attributes.
So you go the attributes. It's almost like an onion. You got your attributes, and some of it you also even your piping, your routing. You know, why does it go? Where is it? But let me go back to the first questions, because I still, I want to challenge you on the future. Oh, but before I do that, I just checked something before I came here. Tim is a knowledge source. Let's test if he knows this one. When was a phone number first used? Do you know? If you do know, I'll do a bit of
1887.
Oh my God! I didn't.
144 years. Telephone numbers have been used as a means of identifying people. Now, isn't that really sad that I know that as well? What's that doing in my brain?
And I thought I was going to finally get something and say, oh well. Anyway, that's a bit old.
That's
even for our sons. I see lots of young faces here, less young. So seriously, what new challenges? Because the challenge is 150 years old. Never planned to see the light of today.
No, and it has definitely become more and more complex. People think, oh, phone numbers, it just happens. They get allocated, and then you start thinking a bit more deeply. Okay, the ITU allocated 4-4 to the UK, 3-3 to France, 3-4 to, yeah. So it started that, oh, then there's a regulator that allocates within the country. Oh, and then they're allocating those to an operator. The operator is allocating those to you. I just built a hierarchy there of almost ownership. And I think that ownership and management of a number, as that number has become more and more, I'm not sure important, but general to our lives, the method of ownership has become more critical. And it also works in a slightly different way, which we've ended up referring to as a right to use. Do you have a right to use this number? So when I say I'm who I am, is it really my number, or have I borrowed someone else? So the future requires a much clearer definition of this hierarchy of, well, this is a telephone number that operator A uses, and it's been allocated to them. He's allocated it to Tim Ward. Tim Ward is actually running on a platform that is being provided by a third service provider. So all of those people have the right to use that number. Gaining clarity of that ownership chain, and again, this concept of right to use is critical to allow you to, again, know that when a number's being used, it's being used by someone who should be using it, can be using it. So I think building the trust in numbers by having some of these sort of almost management mechanisms and tools behind the use of numbers becomes very important.
Now we have 15 minutes, but you bring up to my mind issues that are today fundamental, like spoofing somebody that doesn't have a right to use, but pretend to be you, etc. Oh, lots of interest. Or do not originate numbers. Let's not go there for right now. But just on the questions of ownership or right to use, I can't see all of you, but who? Raise your hand. Do you own your phone number? Raise your hand. Oh, we have seen very...
Are you sure?
Who thinks he's got just the right to use it temporarily? Right to use? Oh, I got one time. Who doesn't care or doesn't know? Who's listening? Okay. No. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, fine. You are attentive. Okay, fine. So let's go back to it. Yes, sir.
So I mean, again, not many people are aware of this, but there are some countries where, at a government level, they consider the phone number is a personal attribute. It's yours to use. You can move it between any operator. You almost give your operator permission to use your telephone number. There are other countries where the operator themselves has bought a range of numbers. They're actually paying or licensing, or they've paid a fee to be able to use particular numbers. It's an asset. They want to sweat that asset. They actually want to generate money from their number ranges and they cost money to get them. Then there are other countries where it's very much the regulator or the administration that's been put in place by the regulator who has responsibility for allocating and moving those things around, those numbers around. So there's actually three fundamental ownership models that we've come across. And it depends almost on the politics and the government environment of that particular country as to what the rules are about how those numbers are being administered.
Some of you might think this is technicality, but back to my family, that actually shapes how we're going to be defining our attributes, our numbers. So kind of touches our life. I'm kind of interested in that. But before that, we have 4 minutes. I'm not going to ask all the questions like we'd got. Let's see if you've got questions from the public. Anybody else has got any question on numbers? Any numbers? Closest pizza place? Information service on number.
The usual question I get when you say, so what do you do? Oh, I work in numbers and the management of numbers. And the first thing somebody says is, really? That's the most boring subject on the planet. But as you can see, there's a funny enthusiasm when you get into the depths of it.
But you know,
there's a question there.
And while we're waiting, maybe boring is good. SMS just had its 30th birthday, and everybody keeps on telling it's going to be dead any minute. And surprisingly, 147 years old, nobody even challenges.
No.
The phone numbers are going to die, so they're going to here to stay. Maybe. Sorry, you had a question.
Hi, hello. What are your thoughts about virtual phone numbers?
Sorry, virtual phone numbers.
Virtual phone numbers, which doesn't belong, to operators and are being used by multiple,
So I think it creates a particular problem. It also creates a particular opportunity. I think it is one of those things where. And just to make sure everybody is aware, if you're using one of the over-the-top service providers and you have not identified an individual number that you're going to use, you've not bought a phone number from them or leased a number from them, then you'll just get allocated a random number and you have no idea what it is. Many of the services that are out there today that will score a number for risk, when they see one of those numbers, it's probably been used for spam by someone at some time. So it'll be marked as a spam number. That means if you're going to use a virtual number that is not allocated to you as an individual, you run a very, very big risk that people are going to see spam on their phone, and it's very difficult to avoid that because it's not yours, you have no control over it. Even the operator who has allocated it has no real control of the content. So I think it's almost a good thing that there's emerged this scoring of numbers that is resulting in people being able to say, watch out, this could be anything. Now there's another side to it, which is some people want to be anonymized. That whole concept, they wish to be able to make a call and not identify themselves. Now if that's the case, don't expect to be trusted. Don't expect to be able to have a deep and meaningful conversation about your personal finances if you have anonymized your environment. So they have their place, they have an opportunity, they have their risks. If, however, you wish to make a call and you wish the person to know who you are, don't try using a virtual number.
I like that. And talking about future, it sounds like you touched on something important. There used to be communication, there used to be vanilla, and that's it. And now we're talking about trusted communication, or even verified communication, etc., etc. So all different layers of communication are coming up.
And I think people have become much more dependent on this. I think there's been obviously a strong recognition by the regulators that they need to take action on what the FCC, the American regulator, is referring to as robocalling. Most of us would consider as spam or unwelcome calls or nuisance calls or fraudulent calls. They all fall into that category of an unwelcome call that you didn't want to take. Now, I think in the past it's been up to the individual to beware. But now the regulators are taking a little more responsibility, and I think we're all becoming much more aware that that telephone number really is a key, it really is critical, because it is identifying you. Take care of it, make sure that it is secure and make sure that it can be trusted, make sure that it's properly communicated to others, and make sure that there are systems, and that's part of the job that my company for forms, to allow that to be identified and distributed to the ecosystem that are actually using those numbers, and that includes the individual subscriber themselves. So I think that distribution of information, the collection of that information, is simply becoming more and more important. When you talk about the future, I think that really is where it goes in recognizing registry concepts can really help in that environment.
So we still expect that the future will have a phone number, you'll have this phone number somewhere, but lots of things are going to happen in the background, it seems, and that phone number might have a much greater value even in future. So well done. Maybe we'll see the 200-year celebration
I'm sure.
of phone number. We'll wait another 50 years or so. Well, that's all the time that we have for this. I'd like to thank you for bringing this essential topic. I really like it. I'll come back to more than 50 minutes about the phone numbers. Tim Ward, VP at Xconnect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.